p.m. Before we adopt the agenda, same as the last time when Rimrock was here, I'm going to switch items 4 and 5 around so that the public comments section will be after the delegation from NRCB. So I would ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that Council adopt the agenda for the regular Council meeting September 26th as amended to switch items 4 and 5.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. Agenda approvals. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Walsh that the following are adopted by omnibus motion in accordance with Council's procedure bylaw, the September 12th regular Council meeting minutes, and the strategic priorities chart.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so today I'm going to put out the rules of engagement again, just so that everybody's clear. So the NRCB delegation are here to discuss the increase in odor from the Rimrock feeders operation and possible solutions to deal with it. The NRCB will make their presentation to Council and be available to answer any questions from Council regarding the increased odor that High River is experiencing. If the public has questions for Council, they are welcome to ask those questions during the public questions feedback portion of the meeting immediately following the delegation. The public will not have the opportunity to address the NRCB representatives directly. This is also not a public hearing for the biodigester. If Council or the public has questions about the permitting of the biodigester, they can take those up through the permitting process of the biodigester. The Town of High River has no stroke in any of the operating or permitting regulation of the feedlot and or the biodigester. And if any member of the public becomes disrespectful during the delegation, we will end the delegation's presentation and immediately move on with the meeting and with the agenda. So on that note, we have from the NRCB, Kevin and Denny are here to explain their involvement on the regulation of this stuff, and we had the pleasure of touring Council and Foothills County and MLA Roger Reed. We all toured the feedlot, and the Rimrock folks gave everybody a great education on how the operation works, etc. So I think Council's got a lot better idea as to when some of these things are being talked about, that they've got a visual to it now, which always helps. So on that, I'll hand it over to you, Kevin, to lead the delegation, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks to Council for allowing us to come and give a presentation. So today, like I say, Denny Pushkar is one of the inspectors in Lethbridge office. Probably a lot of people in the town have talked to Denny or myself over the last while. I'm the compliance manager for the NRCB, and we're both out of Lethbridge. Next slide, please. So who are we? What do we do? So the NRCB is a regulatory agency under the Ministry of Alberta Environment. And we administer the Agricultural Operation Practices Act, and we also have the Natural Resources Conservation Board Act. Me and Denny focus mostly on the Agricultural Operation Practices Act, which is the one for feedlots. We can confine feeding operations in the province. That's the ones that we regulate under that act. Next slide, please. So the Act has many parts. There's matters, administrative regulation standards, and all different sections that we implement and administer the Act. We do not, the NRCB does not hold the Act. The Act is held by Alberta Agriculture, so we can't change the Act. We can't make amendments to the Act. That's all done through Alberta Agriculture. We just administer the Act. Next slide, please. So a couple of things that we do under the Act, the NRCB does, we do permits. So if you want to build a new confined feeding operations, we have an applications department that would do that permitting process, review those permits, and then issue a permit if it meets all the requirements. We also have compliance and enforcement, and that's what that's what Denny and myself do. Next slide, please. So currently on the application side, there's 7 approval officers. Like I say, they'll assess whether an application meets AOPA, they'll assess whether it's consistent with the planning, and they'll, with the planning of the municipality, and they'll also see how they address directly affected parties that send in statements of concern. They'll address that through the application process. Next slide. So this is kind of what me and Denny do. This is a compliance and enforcement section. We have 6 inspectors across the province. Inspectors will follow up. We have a complaint, a 24-hour complaint line, and a lot of you have submitted complaints through that line. That's perfect. That's what it's there for. So when a complaint comes in through that complaint line, it is emailed to our admin staff. The admin staff then decide what office gets it and what inspector gets it, and it's routed to the inspector. If it comes in after hours, and if it is an emergency, or if you need to talk to someone right away, it goes to my cell phone. So the call center phones my cell phone, they phone my home phone, and they keep rotating until they get hold of me. So, if it is an emergency, and an emergency is usually if we have manure impacted water going into a water body, affecting drinking water, something like that, that's an emergency. But sometimes other things happen and people want to talk to somebody after hours. So there is the ability, if you phone the call center and you say, I want to talk to someone right now, it's an emergency, they will put it through to me. We also work very closely with other agencies. So maybe a call comes in, maybe it's in northern Alberta, maybe it's way out east or something. We use other agencies. We work with Alberta Environment, Environment Canada, county bylaw officers, sheriffs, Fish and Wildlife. If we need boots on the ground or we need people there, we can usually get them there. There's usually somebody in the area for emergencies. Inspectors also follow up on annual permit conditions. So if a permit has that you must annually sample your water well and submit samples to the NRCB, inspectors will follow up on that. They also conduct post-construction inspections. So when a new facility is built, the approval officer will go out with the inspector and say, okay, here's the new facility that I just permitted, show the inspector meets the operator, the approval officer is done, and now it's up to the inspector to deal with any ongoing compliance from that operation. They also conduct compliance program. We have risk-based compliance programs, and there's follow-up to those. Next slide, please. Enforcement. So we have an escalating ladder of enforcement tools. The very first is voluntary compliance. Go out, find out what's going on, discuss it with the operator, try and find solutions. The operators know their operation best, therefore we'll say to them, this is what needs to be done, you tell me how we get there. The NRCB will provide timelines and guidance to what's being done, but we'll rely on the operator to make those corrections. We'll then go to verbal directive. We can then go to a written compliance directive. We can then go to an enforcement order. With an enforcement order, it's a legal document. We issue an enforcement order. If you don't follow the terms and conditions of that enforcement order, we can apply to the courts for a court order forcing you. We do have another one called emergency orders, and that's just exactly what it is. If it's an emergency and something that has to be done right now because there's an immediate or risk to the environment or an impeding risk to the environment, we can issue an emergency order, instructs the operator to do ABC. If they do not do that, we have the ability to hire someone to go in and do those work. So let's say we have a manure spill and it's flowing into a river or something, and we need a berm built. And the operator says, you know what, I'm not building a berm. We can hire a construction company, come in, build that berm, and then charge him back those costs. The enforcement order and the charges on the emergency order are both appealable to the board. So if an operator says, you know what, I think Kevin's way out there on this enforcement order, they can ask the board, the NRCB board, for a review, and they'll hold a review. They'll ask for a review. If the board does grant a review, then there'll be a review hearing of the terms and conditions of that enforcement order. Lastly, we have prosecution. We've done a couple, but we can go through the court system. It's a lengthy process, but it is another tool that we can use. Next slide, please. Okay, I know everyone here did not come to hear about the NRCB's mandate or what we do or what inspectors do. They want to know what's happening with the odors at Rimrock. So I'm going to try and address as many questions as I can. Denny and myself have probably talked to over 200 people in this town that phoned in a complaint, that wanted a call back. We've had inspectors in town. I personally have spent the night here. I was in the evening. I drove around communities. I talked to people. I stopped at parks and talked to people. I stopped people on the street. I was kind of the creeper driving through the neighborhood all night. But it was good. We listened to people. We are here in the evening, 10, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. We're here at 6 o'clock in the morning, monitoring the odors. The feedlot has been, Rimrock Feeders has been excellent. They allow us on site at any time. It's not like there's big fans that they're turning on at 10 o'clock at night and blowing all the odor into Rimrock at night, or into town at night. That's not happening. It's just us trying to find out exactly where these odors are come from. So The feedlot is permitted for 35,000 head of beef finishers on that footprint. The footprint has not changed from when Western had it. When Rimrock bought it, we had air photos. We had marked air photos and checked the footprint that when Western had it through historical air photos. We checked it when Rimrock got it, and we check it all the time to make sure the footprint has not changed. The permit was for 35,000. There was a grandfathering determination that was done a year ago because the permit wasn't exactly clear on the exact number and type of animals, so we did a grandfathering determination. That 35,000 head number was from Western's records. The people, they had some of Western's old records, they supplied those to us to prove that on January 1st of 2002, that's what the capacity of that feedlot was. So that's what they're grandfathered for. They cannot go over that capacity, they are at that capacity. And the footprint has not changed, and the capacity has not changed. So a lot of questions about, well, you know, the feedlot was depopulated for a while when Western left. When Western depopulated the feedlot in 2017, it was just to depopulate it to try and find a new owner. And it was only depopulated for a couple of years while they found a new owner. They were still spreading manure, they were still cleaning the pens, there were still staff on site there as they made a transition to a new owner. Next slide, please. So let's just go to the last slide. Next slide, please. So here's where we're at, questions. Everybody's here to get some answers to some questions. So I have a list of questions, and I'm just going to ask them myself, and I'm going to provide the answers. These are the same questions that when we talk to people, they're asking me on the street. So who regulates the feedlots in Alberta? The NRCB does. Like I said, we administer the Agricultural Operation Practices Act. That's our job. Why is the odor from Rimrock so much worse than it was from Western? So a lot of the people that we talked to are saying, you know what, when Western had it, it was bad in the spring, it was bad in the fall, but during the summer it wasn't that bad. But they're telling us this year, during the summer, in July and August, at the evening, at 9, 10 o'clock at night, they want to go out on your deck, you want to have a barbecue, you want to have a beer, and this odor comes in, and it's a very pungent, it's a strong odor. Why is it so different? That's why we were here in town to find out what that odor, what it smells like, and then to try and correlate that to the feedlot to see where it's coming from. What we've kind of decided and kind of landed on is that the catch basins. So if you don't know what a catch basin is, all the pens at Rimrock are sloped, so all the runoff flows into one direction, and it flows into a containment pond. And those containment ponds are just that. They're a containment pond to hold manure, impacted runoff, until it can be applied to the land. So it doesn't leave the property and go into the neighbors, and it doesn't go into a river or a water body. It's a containment pond. So I think over the years, you know, when Western had it, and over the years had some dry years, had some wet years, I think we're getting a buildup of solids in there, and that's creating that pungent odor. When we drive by the catch basins, we can smell it. So we're working with Rimrock to get those catch basins pumped out, cleaned out, and we think that that's going to help address that pungent odor that comes in the evening. And it's usually when the wind dies down and we get that inversion, so it's hot during the day, it's cooling off at night, and the wind dies down and it floats across. And we think it's that catch basin odor that's really carrying into town and giving people that real pungent odor. So that's what our focus is now. We will work on that. If that doesn't solve the problem, I have another list. We'll work on the next one down the list. We'll keep working till we find a solution. Rimrock is committed to working with us. They're looking for solutions too. We will keep on that process. But with the catch basins cleaned out, so if we get the catch basins cleaned out in the next couple of weeks, let's say the odor drops off. That's great. But we won't really know that it's effective until we get back to the same conditions as we were in July and August, those hot days. So yeah, we'll get the catch basins cleaned out and the odor may have, but maybe that's a seasonal difference. I don't know. But when we get back to summer, we'll see. And if it's not, we'll look at other options and keep going down the list. So that's what we're doing about the odor. Rimrock is not feeding any more cattle than Western did. This one here, I hope somebody's got some jobs for me to do because I may be unemployed when I get back to work tomorrow, but everybody asks, can you shut the feedlot down? Just shut it down. Shut it down till they fix the odor. The Act does allow us that. That's a tool in our inspector's toolbox, but that's a serious tool and one we take very seriously. We're looking to find solutions. We're not out there to shut businesses down. We want to find a solution that works for everybody The people in the town have told us the benchmark, back to where it was when Western had it. If it was back to that, we can live with that. That's, we're used to it, and if it goes back to that level. So that's the target that we're hitting for. So right now, when we're not looking at shutting the feedlot down, if we try all the things on our list and everything else, maybe a bridge we cross at some point in time, but right now, it's not even on my radar. As far as the biodigester, Mayor Snodgrass talked about that. That is permitted through Alberta Environment. The NRCB has a very, very small role in that, and it's just that if the biodigester has some kind of facility to hold manure while it's going into the biodigester, we may permit that. When they land apply that digestate after it's been through the digester, we may have a part of that. But as far as the permitting and the function of the actual biodigester, that's Alberta Environment. And I don't mean to give people the runaround. They keep saying, everybody's just trying to pass the buck. That's really in their wheelhouse. And we work with Alberta Environment. I've talked to Alberta Environment. They're aware of the odor problems, and we'll keep in that communication. But questions about the biodigester, sorry, we can't answer them. You have to go to Alberta Environment for those. So the catch basins are going to be pumped out hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So the other one that we're hearing, what are the health concerns? If we're smelling all this odor, is it affecting our health? What we tell everybody, if you have a health condition or a health problem that you think is from the odors, please talk to your doctor or your health inspector. We're not health experts. We rely you to talk to them. We've talked to the local health inspector. He knows that we're dealing with odor issues. So if you have health concerns, please talk to your doctor or the health inspector about those. That's all that I have. I hope I've answered most of the questions. These are most of the questions that we've been answering on the phone. And we're welcome to talk to people on the phone. If you want to phone in a complaint, if you phone in a complaint and you want to call back, please tell the call center, I want someone to call me back. And we will. If you don't want to call back, state that too. If we're getting 1 or 2 calls, that's fine. But we're at the time we got about 250. That's a lot of calls. And Denny was spending most of his time on the phone. So, if you don't want to call back, please state that. The other thing I would ask is that when the call center asks you, rate the odor on a scale of 1 to 10. Just saying a 10 all the time doesn't help me. If it's a 10, yes, say it's a 10. But if it's only a 6 or a 7 or 8, please tell me that. Because as we go through and we make some of these mitigation processes, I need to know whether I'm making small gains. So people say, you know what, it was a 10, but now it's only an 8. It's getting better. Okay, we'll proceed down that road and we'll see what other changes we have to make to get that down to a more acceptable level. But please be honest. When you rate those odors, please be as honest as you can. It helps us out a lot. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kevin. I'll open it up for questions from council. Most of us were on the tour this morning, so I think a lot of what you just spoke about was exactly what we talked about when we were on site. So if there are no questions from council, then we can move on. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you guys for being here and willingness to share your findings with us. Should we expect some excessive odors as these catch basins are being cleaned out in the next couple of weeks?
There will be. As we get in to clean these out, there will be some odors. The process that Rimrock is using to clean those out, or to take that stuff out of the catch basin and apply it on the land, is really cutting edge technology. It's basically, they set up pumps at the catch basin, they lay out miles of 8-inch flat lay hose, and it goes to a direct injection system. So it's a coulter system on the back of a tractor that goes back and forth in the field. So we're not trucking it, we're not spraying it, it goes directly into the soil. We have found that system greatly reduces the odor, but can I say there'll be no odors? I can't. There will be some. Hopefully it's a short duration, and then it's a long-term gain.
Councillor Nychuk.
There we go. Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Thanks, gentlemen, for coming out and bringing your delegation and information. Just an attestation to Kevin. I know he's made reference to taking lots of calls and doing it at all times of the day. And I know somebody personally that spoke with you for maybe about an hour at a pretty late time in the evening. So I guess a pat on the back and a thank you for listening to the concerns of our citizens and doing so at a time that we would call non-business hours. So a great appreciation for that. My first question is, in terms of sensory perception, are we just going with subjective 0 to 10 on the smell meter? The oil and gas industry has all kinds of measurement tools for odor and for things that are in the air. Seemingly, your organization is going with, oh, it's about a 7. Oh, it's about a 5. Oh, it's 10. I'm sure there's lots of people that have said it's off the scale all the time. But there are tools that are out there that can be used, and I'm not saying that to go and spend a whole bunch of money, but maybe it can help us with the long-term solution over what we're experiencing, right? Is there any consideration or any kind of those tools that maybe you've used and we haven't heard about?
So yeah, it is. Right now we're doing subjective, and when I was here overnight in the evening, I brought my wife. Everybody says, "Oh, Kevin, you're desensitized. You don't know what smell is." So I brought my wife just to say, "What is it? What's your rating?" And we'd talk to people on the street, and I'd say, "What's your rating?" I'd ask my wife and me. That being said, we've had a lot of people say, "You know what? Why don't you get something that gives you a number so we can rate it?" And we are looking into it. We've approached a couple of companies that are willing to let us demo units. We're just trying to find out what's the best one, and what's it really going to measure. If it gives me a scale of 1 to 50, what does that mean? We need to be able to put it in perspective to say that, 35 to 40 is really offensive to everyone, 10 to 20 is not offensive. So we're just trying to find out what's the best type of meter and what's the best type of odor. Is it ammonia? Is it H2S gas? What are we trying to measure? So it's just trying to find out that meter that would do that. But yeah, we are looking at it for sure.
Sorry. That would give us a benchmark going forward. I don't think this is going to be a one and done situation. I think we're going to deal with this as a community for a long period of time, and for us, the county, Rimrock, to work together to ensure that the residents of this community have a livable community. I think those things to be in place and for us all to agree on what those parameters might be, not only from the smell side, but also from the health concern side, right? Some of those things that are out there floating around, you ingest or breathe in, consume some of those things in a large quantity, it can be detrimental to your health. And I'm not saying that's existing right now, but obviously that's a concern, and we want to be able to monitor that. So from my chair, I would greatly appreciate if we had some scientific metrics that we could look at this instead of finger in the air or the nose. It's going to serve us all better, right? From us to Rimrock to everybody involved. I would appreciate if we could get down a road and a pathway. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you too for being here. This monitor's in the wrong spot to see everybody. I just wanted to, there we go. Who knew it was that easy? Thank you. Can you just elaborate a little bit more? I think this year we sort of had, from my understanding earlier today, a little bit more of a perfect storm of creating the conditions for that retention pond. And if there's, other factors that may contribute to going forward as far as what our expectation can be for this time next year. Please.
Sure, no problem. So I don't know, the people that weren't on the tour, when Rimrock purchased the feedlot, they re-landscaped it and they lined all the pens with a product called roller compacted concrete. Basically, it's an aggregate compound. It's got fly ash, it's got cement powder, it's got some other things. They put it in at about 8 inches thick, and then you pack it down. And it's that compression, that compaction that makes it hard. And it's hard. It's like concrete. So when you line all the pens with that, then when we have a rainfall event, more runoff goes through than maybe a clay-lined pen that has maybe a little bit more absorption, or maybe it's got punched out holes where the water can sit. When you have a smooth surface, it runs off. So I think this year with the heavy rains that we had, in June, may have put more organic matter into those catch basins, but I think there's also a buildup over years, and when Western had it in that catch basin too. And maybe just the increased runoff just made that a little worse. It agitated that. So I think it was kind of the perfect storm with the installation of the roller compacted concrete, rimrock getting up to full capacity, or not quite full capacity, but getting into operating mode, and then maybe with those catch basins having a sludge or an organic matter from previous years build up, it all led to where we were with the odors this year.
Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Sorry, you talked a bit about timelines and some work that's happening now. In the interest of communication with us, with our residents, and I'm kind of looking to the Rimrock folks too. If we could have communication on what's going on and these expected timelines, is that something that possibly could be shared? It's just there's a lot of interest in the community, right? And there's ways to get information out there so people know things are happening. That Rimrock's trying to put the work in to make this better, and that's appreciated. But the work that you guys are doing as well, maybe we can come up with a communication plan that allows us to get that out to the residents. So, they're aware things are going on. When you don't have information, it tends to make things worse than better. So if we can work to something like that, I think the community would appreciate it if you guys and Rimrock can maybe provide that to us, and we have methods to disseminate that out to the public. So thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that. That reminds me. What we started last week was we put a question and answer document, just like the one that I was reading here today, on our website. So if you go to nrcb.ca, you can pull up that. We will try to update that document and provide updates on there as things happen, so you can go on our website and find out what we're doing. But yeah, we'll gladly work with Rimrock, work with the council, and if we can get something out to you guys as to updates, we'd gladly do that.
Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. With regards to the changes in the catch basin, I can say that, catch basin system, is that, do you think just because it was, unused for a period of time and then it's back up and then you've got the water, what about the changes in the feed regarding, does that also contribute to that residual water?
Like I said before, I have a list of things that we're going to look at for the catch basin. Feed is on that list, and we've talked to Rimrock about it a little bit. We heard some just today about it. So right now, we're not looking at the composition of the catch basin. We're just saying we think that's what it is. We've stood beside it. Denny got really close and actually scooped out some samples of it. So right now we're thinking that's the odor, regardless of what's in there. We just know that's creating a very pungent odor. So we're kind of focusing on that. Going forward, we may look at feed.
Well, thank you.
I'm not showing any other questions from council, if we're all good here. Thanks very much, Kevin and Denny, for coming today. I'm going to open it up to our question period. So do we have that microphone available, Kent? If there's anybody in the crowd that wants to ask a question, I'm going to ask you to ask it directly to council. Like I said, this isn't a public hearing. I'm putting questions to the NRCB, so you can give us your feedback and your questions directly to us, please. Anybody?
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, it seems to me there's always a lot of nice, politically correct things being said. But in the meantime, we're the guys who are going to bear the brunt if these things don't work. If you clean out the catch basin and we go through another summer, we're the people who are affected by it. Rimrock isn't. So why are you guys not putting some of the load on them or the brunt on them? Like, why not cut them, their capacity in half, 12,500 or 15,000 head, when they show us that they can control the smell, give them another 5,000 head. Because this could be another 2 or 3 years of ongoing smell. And I don't think by you guys coming here 1 day a week, 2 days a week, you can come here one day and it might not smell. Within an hour when you leave, it stinks so bad, we can't walk down the street. That's the problem with this. It's not consistent. It's all over the place. It is consistent. It's almost every day. There was only 9 days in July and August. It wasn't so pungent that you could actually go for a walk. 9 days. So we're going to go through all that again while you guys, it's nice. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to try this. But if it doesn't work, here we are. We're stuck again with the same thing. My thing is, if they can't control the smell at 35,000 head, and from my understanding, they have said that they have plans to increase that capacity to 80,000 head. We got to know, because I know there's going to be a lot of people moving out of this town. As for the economic benefit, in 2017 and 18, when there wasn't a big operation out there, there was no economic decline here in High River. We're doing quite fine. There is an economic problem with it, because I'll tell you, anybody that goes to the campground and smells that, they're not coming back. Anybody who books a golf outing that comes from Calgary, there's lots of other golf courses. They're not coming back. Anybody, the restaurants here in town have outdoor patios. How do you think they feel? It's not good. Our house values, they're not going to go up when it gets on major media that we've got a real problem here. And we do have a real problem. They have the right to have their operation, but not at the expense of our quality of life. There's 40 employees out there. There's 15,000 of us, approximately, in High River. Their rights trump our rights. You guys got to put action in now. I can tell you, if you did decrease it, you'd see something being done. They'd get things fixed out there pretty quick. But as long as it's going right now, you guys 35,000 and do this, whatever you want. Oh, it stunk next year. We'll try something else. That's not good enough. That's all I got to say.
So I'll address one thing that was said because it's incorrect, and that's the fact that they're going to increase to 80,000 head. They are permitted to run 35,000 head, correct? There is no expansion. There is no expansion to 80,000 head. You guys tell me if I'm... Well, I'm not going to get into a debate with you, ma'am.
I'll just quote you right now.
You're going to quote me?
No, I'll quote to you what I have from the Cattlemen's Association. This is an article from 2019. Prices said, this was on September 5th, 2019.
Why is her mic not on?
September 5th, 2019, the Canadian Cattlemen on their website. The prices said, the family also runs Korova feeders, which has a total capacity of about 35,000 head at its 2 locations. They recently purchased the former Western feedlots at High River and plan to increase its capacity. With the expansion of this feedlot, which will be called Rimrock Feeders, this brings the total feedlot capacity to 80,000 head. Now that could include their other 2, but at least, they're talking at least a 10,000 head increase.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah, so it's 10,000.
you're adding 2 feedlots together. But,
But still, they're still talking an extra 10,000.
Sure, and I don't know what the plan is. I have no idea. I have no idea. But I just want to clarify, that's, whatever that article is saying is 2 feedlots.
But it's at least 10,000.
It's not 80,000 coming to High River. So, just so that's clear. Go to the next question, please, Karen.
Just before I ask a question, I just want to I guess I won't call it a speech, but I do want to say that the reason we're all here is this whole thing's been very frustrating. The town of High River, council, the mayor throw their hand up in the air, say there's nothing we can do. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's been the position up to now. The county, who approved the permits and gets all the taxes and all the benefit out of this thing, says they can't do anything. It's up to the NRCB. Now, when I talk to the NRCB, you guys are a regulatory branch of the government. All you can do, and this has been passed, I've talked to the government about it, who also sends it back to you guys, but all you can do is regulate, which means that under the Agricultural Operations Act, it sets a bare minimum standard that you have to do. It's no different than the Mine Act, the Electrical Code, the Building Code. Anything that's an act sets out the minimum standards, which says that if you meet this bare minimum, you're okay. You can go far beyond it if you want, but you have to meet at least the bare minimum. So you guys are regulated, much like whether you're a mining inspector, a building inspector, or anything else, to go around and say, are you meeting the minimum standards? Yes, we are. Okay, well, right off the bat, there's no enforcement. Zero enforcement, because you're meeting minimum standards. The problem we're having is the county's thrown their hands up, the town has thrown their hands up, the government has thrown their hands up. The only way you guys can do a better job at regulating is if the government changes these regulations to ensure that operations that operate outside of a frickin' urban center have a different set of standards to operate under than somebody that's operating 100 miles out in the bush. That's the problem you have. Your hands are tied. So now you sit back and we'll see what Rimrod's going to do. We talked about this land injection. Well, 3 years ago when I went out and met with Shiloh, I talked about land injection for the stuff in the lagoons. I got a little bit of experience. My daughter worked at a feedlot for 4 years. My son-in-law hauled manure. I've been around cows and animals just about my entire life. And as I said in the last meeting, we're not talking farming here. We're not talking ranching here. We're talking a commercial beef operation. It's a completely different thing. There's 35,000 head of cattle shoved onto a chunk of land that isn't big enough to be called a hobby farm. And it's located 3 miles or 5 kilometers west of this town. I live in the northwest. That stench blows in. It's not a stink, it's a stench. And it blows in almost every day. And after I've talked to the government, I've met with Roger, I've been here at town council, I've talked to Delia Miller, I've talked to Denny, and Denny's been, you guys have been more than helpful. But I understand the dilemma you have. You're bound by the regulations. So what we're left with, the town can do nothing. Unless the government does something, nothing will change. You can only regulate the minimum standards. We are left to suck it up. That's going to be the same thing next year if it stinks just as bad. We'll be sitting here having the same conversations, trying something different. And it's interesting today. I mean, I heard a couple things. We talked about catch basins. Well, back in 2020, when these guys were starting up, and at the last meeting we were told it's a world-class operation, we talked about fly ash in the pens. And definitely, when you put fly ash in a pen and concrete, cleaning the pens is a lot easier. You're not sinking down in mud, this stuff isn't sinking into the ground, but you get a lot more runoff. Well, surprise, surprise. So now we're sitting there with catch basins, the same catch basins that Western had. You know, there was no improvement to catch basins, no thought about there could be additional runoff. And with that additional runoff comes solids. And I suspect some of those lagoons are probably full of solids. And when they start digging in that stuff, if we thought it stunk before, it's going to stink even more. And then we got some problems. That land base out there for a feedlot's a small land base. They don't have a lot of land. So they dump a lot of crap on private fields. One of the things that happen when you dump on private fields is the responsibility for incorporating that stuff into the soil shifts to the landowner. These guys wipe their hands of it. The minute they dump shit on my place, it's my business to incorporate that into the soil. If I choose not to, and maybe there's benefits for me to doing so, that stuff sits there and the stink just blows into town. So if I live out in Blackie and got 3 sections of land out there I'm getting crap dumped on, I may incorporate it or I may not. That's an issue, something you guys have no control over. So there's all kinds of things here that we're stuck with. And the only thing we can do is suck it up, and we sit here and smell this crap every day. The biodigester, that's come out as, when I read the article on the biodigester, I got to laugh the way it's wrote up. It talks about all these scientific studies that say, you know, it could be reduce the smell by 50%, but it requires further studies to even determine that. Well, there's a lot of biodigesters around that stink. And on top of that, this biodigester is an industrial application. These guys to build it have to rezone that property out there. You can't build a biodigester on a frickin' feedlot. So somebody's going to have to rezone it. And I don't know if the county's going to do that or if it's going to go to a land issue and a government hearing to do it. This biodigester might not even happen. And even if it does happen, it's probably going to do diddly as far as reducing the smell. At least I've asked, show me the empirical evidence. Like put it in front of me saying that here's 5 biodigesters that were here in 2010 and the smell was a 9 out of 10, and by 2012 when they were running, the smell was a 1 out of 10. There's no evidence. In fact, I suggested to council last time to look at like Lowell, Michigan. Go on the internet. There's all kinds of issues out there that have had biodigesters where they're problematic to the people that run around them. It's one of the reasons that there's a group out there that lives, a community group that lives by Rimrock that's been trying to get together and decide if they even want to have a biodigester around them because of the increased possibility of it affecting their lives. And when it comes to health concerns, you know, I think our counselor made a good point. I mean, years ago, who thought Roundup? I mean, who thought asbestos? Who thought black lung? You know when these things come out is 10 years later, 20 years later. That's when we start finding out that people have issues with health related to something. And then we find out, well, okay, we're going to do something about it. Meanwhile, the poor SOBs that got it, and we're waiting for these things to finally show up in the news, are dead or suffering all kinds of consequences because of it. The bottom line is you can't tell me that this kind of stink we've been putting up with 7 out of 10 days every month is good for your health. I know it's sure as hell not good for this community. They get 0 taxes, almost 0 financial benefit. It all goes to the county. And all the residents are left with here is to suck it up. And I, for one, am tired of sucking it up. I want somebody to put their hand up and say, pick me. I'm going to be the person responsible for making this happen. And so far, no one has put their hand up. No one. And as I said last time in council, this town spent almost a decade trying to fight their way out from under this frickin' thing of the flood that happened in 2013. They've spent millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars here mitigating flood damage. The town was known as the town that floods. I don't want it to become known as the town that stinks all the time. And that's where we're heading. So my question to council is, I would very much like them to take a more proactive role. I don't know what that would be, whether it's petitions, sending in letters every frickin' week, doing something. Because sitting on our hands and going, oh well, as a taxpayer in this town, that isn't making me happy.
Okay, no, just hang on, because I got a question coming back. Darwin, right? Okay, come on back. Do you call this sitting on our hands? Do you call us going out to the feedlot and doing a tour to learn and figure out what these guys sitting on our hands?
Craig, in 2020.
I'm asking you, what is it that you would like to see us do?
Well, here, I'll reiterate a conversation we had 3 years ago about this feedlot. When I talked to you about it, what you told me is that you had learned before, when Western was here, there was nothing the town could do to stop it. So essentially your position is you were going to do nothing because there's nothing you can
I don't know that I ever, well, to stop the feedlot?
Yeah.
No.
Well, there we go. Now we got it.
So if that's it, that's the thing I want to clear up. If anybody is in this room thinking that town council is looking at shutting down the feedlot,
Not saying-
we are not.
I'm not saying you can shut it down.
Okay.
But I'm saying we could be doing something.
Is this not that?
This is something. But I don't know if it would be.
Foothills County isn't holding these meetings.
Well, I don't know. Maybe
We chose
could
to.
get 5,000 people to sign a petition or send a letter into the government every week.
But
Or
saying what? That's
that we're fed up with having our community destroyed.
destroyed. I'm gonna,
Our quality of life here has gone to hell.
some of you feel as though the community's being destroyed. I don't feel as though it's being destroyed. We are
quality of
dealing with an increase intensity of the odor from the western feedlot. That's our concern, is to try to figure out what that is. So, Darwin, I'm asking you, would you like to see zero smell? Is that what you're looking for?
I tell you, when I moved here, which was 4 years ago, and there was no feedlot.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was a feedlot. There was no smell. That's what I would like to see. Whether it's possible or not, I understand that's likely impossible as long as there's a feedlot outside of town. But my point is, and I'd ask everybody in here, does anybody in here feel their quality of life has gone to hell? Well,
Okay, so, that's fair. I'm not gonna, that's fair. I'm not gonna challenge you on that, but that feedlot's been there since what, 1979, 80? Right? Well, don't be yelling, I'm just, the Western Feedlots has been in this town since 79, 80, right? Pardon me? Yes, I know. It's a feedlot operation that's 35,000 head. That's what I want to put the reality into it. If people are expecting it to be zero smell, that is not going to happen.
You're right.
It's not, if you close it down, it will. But I'm telling you, sir, we are not looking to close down Western or Rimrock feeders. Let me, well, you know, they can.
I'm not standing here saying we've got to close down Rimrock feeders. That position is up to the county, the government, these people, everybody else. I understand that. But there's a responsibility that we don't have to sit in this town who gets zero benefit from these people operating 3 miles from my house.
No, and I agree, Darwin, and that's what I've been.
So the problem is our quality of life has been destroyed.
With the intensity increase of the smell, there's no question. I will agree with you 100% there, because I've come out of my house going, holy, and I used to work out there. I used to haul shit for
There you go.
out at Western. I know what it's all about. And when I walk out of my house and go, holy Christ, I can taste that stuff.
Yeah.
You can chew it. Like, that's the intensity that we want to work with Rimrock and the NRCB. Let's get this down to where it's, okay, we're dealing with it every now and then. But what I want to make clear to everybody is that if you're looking to shut the for council to be involved in shutting the feedlot down, no, none of us are.
Yeah. That's not what I'm asking.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clear that up. I appreciate that.
Is it still on? Perhaps council can treat this the same way you guys did with the coal mining.
Look, I know that's been a shot that people have taken, and you seriously want to compare this to coal mining? No, I won't even go down that road that you're comparing. I won't. The impacts of that coal mining compared to us dealing with some smell from a large-scale feedlot we're not. The coal mining happens, those landscapes, the water's polluted forever, it's never to come back. If this feedlot operation, I know you can shake your head all you want, but I'm not even remotely going to compare this to the coal mining fight. They are two completely different things.
What I'm saying there is that the council does have the ability to change things. You did it for the coal mine, you guys can do the same kind of thing with this. It impacts everybody as much as the coal mines would have, but you guys were successful in that one, we appreciate that. You can do the same thing
So
with this.
I I understand you want the feedlot to be shut down, just like we did with the coal mine. So what do you want? You want zero smell?
We don't want to be 3 years down the road still talking about it.
I can't regulate the number of head. Like, I'm just going to defend the coal mining thing compared to this. Like, you know, we spoke about this morning. We all want to go into co-op, and we all want our fresh steak and our ribeye sitting there ready. No, listen to me. This is, what? 45, Cargill Foods, this is the scale that we are dealing with. Cargill Foods, north of town, 4,500 head per day to meet the demand. That's one packing plant. To meet that demand. I don't know where are we going to do this. It's an absolute first world problem, but
We all need gasoline, but that doesn't mean the gasoline industry runs rampant doing whatever they want, impacting the environment. That's the same.
That's
thing. All of us
sir.
saying shut them down, control it more. These guys have to be more proactive, look after. We're not bearing the brunt. They should be bearing the brunt. They should have their numbers reduced, show us they can control it, increase their numbers. Increase their numbers back to 35,000. But they're not doing that.
And I'll finish this conversation with this. That's exactly what we are trying to do, is work with Rimrock and bring these concerns to Rimrock, work with the NRCB to try to find solutions in this whole thing. That's what we are absolutely doing. I'm not going to say, no, Darwin, we're going to be done because we got a whole council meeting to get through yet. I just wanted to clarify a few pieces there because as to where council sits on this. But we are 100% invested in working together to figure out how we can mitigate this smell as best as we possibly can.
Mayor, even if they shut
Go ahead, Kevin.
Just want to make one comment, and it comes back to manure spreading. I don't care whose land it's spread on, I don't care who it spreads, they all have to follow the same rules. Whether Rimrock spreads on their own land or whether Rimrock gives that manure and spreads it on a neighbor's land, they follow the same rules, the same setbacks. If it's applied on cultivated land, it must be incorporated within 48 hours. I don't care whose manure it is, I don't care whose land it is, everybody follows the same rules.
Thanks very much. Okay, we're going to move on our agenda to, thanks very much, Kevin and Denny, for showing up. Thanks to the public for coming and asking questions. Kieran with Marigold Library System. Actually, we'll give it 5 minutes just to allow the room to Okay, we'll move on with the Marigold Library System. Kieran?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The Marigold Library System is a library resource and information center established under the Alberta Libraries Act. Schedule C in the report is an amendment to the Marigold Agreement that outlines Marigold's per capita levy rates for municipalities and library boards. The rates for 2023 and 2024 have been slightly increased as seen in the proposed municipal contributions to the Marigold Library System by municipalities with municipal library boards, with an increase of 11 cents per capita in 2023 and an additional increase of 11 cents per capita in 2024. Because of this change, there's an increase in financial impact. The reasons for these increases are outlined in Attachment 6, Letter for Per Capita Levies 2023 and 2024 Schedule, outlining the levy rates. If Council is to authorize the Mayor to sign Schedule C to the Marigold Agreement outlining the levy rates for municipalities and library boards for 2023 and 2024, administration will return a fully executed copy of Schedule C to Marigold. I'm now open to any questions from Mayor and Council.
Questions from Council? Councillor Kinghorn?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. You got way ahead of me here. I'm trying to find the motion again. Can you read the motion back, please?
Want me to read it back? Please. So I'll just put the motion on the floor right now. So I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Jones. The council authorized the mayor and chair of the High River Library Board to sign Schedule C to the Marigold Agreement, outlining the levy rates for municipalities and library boards for 2023 and 2024, and that council direct administration to return a fully executed copy of Schedule C to Marigold. Just let Jenny give me that motion for.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I'll give you the motion.
Councillor Kinghorn, sorry. You're good? Okay. No further questions? All in favor? Or sorry, Jenny, you had a question?
So they are asking for an increase and we just agree to it. Do we have any opposition to the increase or can we oppose it?
I am not 100% sure if we did want to go against the rates, the process in that, but I'm not sure if Chris has an answer.
Mayor Snodgrass through the Councillor Jones. Certainly Council could oppose the signing of the agreement and lodge a question to Marigold about the increase to the rates. It would delay the execution of the agreement and may delay the funding to the library for 2023. But that is certainly within Council's purvey to ask that question if that's an important issue. I don't know the real process with Marigold if we oppose the rates and decide to file opposition to those rates, but we can certainly try and find out if that's what Council wants to do.
I guess not understanding their whole process as a Marigold system, I understand a little bit being on the library board for sure, but I also see even in their charts, like they give grants back to the municipalities in a large sum of money there. So I'm concerned that part of their increased rates is just to give the money back to the library boards. I mean, if this is excess money or how that specifically works, I'm not 100% sure about why the increase in the amount.
Certainly, Mayor Snodgrass through the Councillor Jones. The Marigold system does help and assist the library in their funding programs, and it is a resource that they use. I don't know all the full details, and that's certainly something that we could ask the library director to come to a meeting if that's Council's prerogative to delay this. But it is a funding mechanism to help fund the library system, provide library services to the municipality. This has been a standard agreement for for a long time with this municipality. And it is good to question the rates at some points in time, because there needs to be a check and balance as well from that perspective with these other agencies.
Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. My question is very basic. It's also about the funding, how this is organized. We're suggesting here that we pay $6.24 per capita. Does the library also get additional funding, as we come into the budgeting process? Are they going to present and say, oh, well, they require these additional dollars? Or is this the only funding that the municipality gives?
Mayor Snodgrass, through the Councillor Walsh, there is additional funding that does come in on top of that through their Community Grant and Aid program. And so that's the program, if Council recalls, through the budget process last year that Council has directed us to come back with a new system that has increased accountability associated with that funding level and an increased rationale from that perspective. So they do get additional funding in addition to the Marigold funding that they do receive too.
And will we have the opportunity to review the financial standings to understand whether this is insufficient or?
That's correct. We will have their full financials to come back to council as part of that process.
And is it fair to say that we can hold making this decision till we understand the financial logistics? They
do have a deadline of September 30th for this agreement to be executed. However, council's the process I would suggest is, instead of deferring it, is either to adopt or not to adopt the motion that you see before you, and then we can send correspondence to the Marigold system saying that we don't agree with the price increase and we need to get a better understanding where this funding is going to be allocated to.
Or change the funding going out during budgeting?
That's an option too.
All right, thank you.
So I just want to clarify, Chris, this increase, 11 cents per person per capita per year, is that right?
That's correct.
So we're talking about $1,650, correct?
You're asking me to do my math in my head?
Well, I just did it on a calculator because I couldn't do it. Okay.
That's correct.
$1,650. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. So I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, Marigold is all of the resources that are available to the library. So this is the fee for service for using all the materials and all the resources, correct? Okay.
That's correct.
So if we're looking at that, I would suggest that perhaps the time to look at the overall funding model will be at budget time or going into budget season. This is sort of one of those things that, in order for us to have these resources and materials and supplies, we kind of need to have, correct?
That would be probably a preferred process to keep the agreement active, and to allow that further conversation directly with our library board on their actual funding needs compared to their reserve accounts, as well as what their request is going to be through their fee-for-service agreement or whatever agreement that we decide to come up with the new framework that we present to them.
Okay, thank you. That makes it clear for me.
No further questions. Sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
Being blank all meeting here. Just reminding council that not all municipalities are members of Marigold. That's a choice that the library makes to use that resource. And I agree. I think this should be part of the budget process. But just making that comment, it's not a requirement. It's a choice made by the library.
That's a good point. No further questions. I'll ask for the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Federal Active Transportation Funding Agreement Authorization. Chris.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. As Council's aware, we did receive approval from our grant application that Council directed us to submit in March of 2022 for $50,000 towards an active transportation program. The federal government in their grant programs is quite specific in certain aspects of things, and this is one of those check boxes for their agreement to comply with their overall funding agreement. They received the $50,000 as a very, very specifically worded resolution, as you see before you, in order to finalize that agreement. The agreement's been reviewed internally by both finance and administration, and we're happy with what the contents include. And we fired our draft back to the federal government and have received confirmation on that they're okay with our changes. And this is kind of the last stage in order for them to transfer the $50,000 directly to the town of High River. That's the rationale for the recommendation, Mayor Snodgrass.
Any questions? Ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that Council confirms that it meets the requirements of the Canada Active Transportation Fund Agreement, and the Council authorize the CAO to execute the agreement on behalf of the town of High River.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Chris. High River Bike Park Society. I don't know if this needs a whole big presentation or anything, Sarah. I know you've been sitting there the whole meeting, but we're talking about $130 to waive the fee.
Exactly, that's all we're talking about. So I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that it's not necessary to have a presentation, but I will ask you and members of council if there are any questions for me.
Any questions from council? I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Walsh that the pump track development will ultimately be owned by and operated by the town. I put my little thing in the wrong spot, so be it resolved that Council waive the signage development permit fee of $130 as per rate bylaw 4601/2022.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Sarah. Board and committee reports. Anybody have any? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I just wanted to bring everyone into awareness that the High River Chamber will be hosting a mingle on September 28th at the Rio Alto from 5 until 7. It's a great opportunity to meet with fellow business members and connect in the community.
Councillor Walsh. That's it, that's all? Thank you. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the Community Futures Highwood, there's been a lot of work with the bylaws and how they're structuring the board. And the intention of this dialogue is to introduce you to the idea that they're looking at being able to select members of the Community Futures Board themselves versus municipal appointments or county appointments, so that they can then have a stronger board with people with specific knowledge and skills related to the type of work that they do. Those bylaws should be announced later this week at the AGM. Ursula did suggest to start the conversation here just to give people something to think about. So I can see how it would work to their favor to be able to choose somebody that had different areas of expertise rather than just whoever gets sent was the idea. And that was all.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? Town of High River will own the pump track when it's all done. Yep. Yep. Anybody else? Gary, Linda? Council correspondence, email from Councillor Bill Chapman. I think Tanya actually won that, didn't she? The Town South piece. And second edition called Action of Government of Alberta. So on that note, we are going to move into a closed meeting, so I'll just ask that staff and council are the only ones in the room, please.
10 seconds here. Let you know. Good to go.
Thank you. So I'll ask for a motion, number one, appointing one of our board and committee members. So I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Jones that council appoint Kathy Cooey to the Community Vitality Advisory Committee and the council direct administration to advertise openings for the remaining vacancies on the Town of High River boards and committees and return to council at a future date with recommendations.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I'll give you that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Collective bargaining mandate. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Barton that council approve the collective bargaining mandate.
You have my motion, Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. That's it. That's all. Meeting adjourned, 4:56 p.m.